After my father-in-law took my passport and said, "You'll never leave this house without our permission," my husband watched quietly. I sat powerless until dawn. Years later, when they tried to board a plane, the paper they found waiting in their bag made them. I don't know how to start this. I've never talked about it all at once like this before. I've told pieces. To a therapist, a friend, a lawyer, but never all of it, beginning to, well, not the end, because it's not over yet. I'm not from here. I moved to the U.S. from Southeast Asia when I was 20 to go to college. I came on a student visa. My parents were proud, but we weren't wealthy. I had to juggle classes and a job under the table just to survive. I struggled. And then I met him, my ex. At first, he was sweet, funny, helped me with school stuff, took me out to eat, told me I was smart and strong. I'd never dated before. I was young and lonely. It felt like someone finally saw me. He introduced me to his parents after just 3 months. I didn't realize until much later how fast that was. His mom was polite. His dad was intense. Ex-cop. Big voice. Smiled without warmth. He asked weird questions. Do you like it here more than back home? What would you do if you had to go back? Stuff like that. At the time, I thought he was just being curious. Anyway, I dropped out the next semester. I couldn't afford it anymore. My visa status became unstable, but I didn't really understand how bad that was. I was scared. My boyfriend said, "Marry me. You won't have to worry anymore." I said yes. We had a small courthouse wedding. No party. His parents didn't look happy or unhappy, just blank. After that, we moved into their house. They said it made more sense financially while we got on our feet. I agreed, again, because I didn't know better. I didn't know anything. That's when it all started. Slowly. First, they told me I didn't need to work. Just focus on being a good wife. Then they said I shouldn't go out too much. We don't want people asking questions. I offered to volunteer somewhere. His mom said, "Let's not complicate anything." I still didn't see it yet. Then one day, I asked to visit an old college friend. She was getting married out of state and invited me. I mentioned it at dinner, just casually. My father-in-law looked at me and laughed. "Visit," he said. "With what passport? That's not your choice anymore." I froze. What? He got up, walked to his desk drawer, pulled out my passport and held it up like a trophy. "You'll never leave this house without our permission," he said. Just like that. Word for word. My husband sat next to me. He didn't say a thing. Didn't flinch. Just kept chewing. I felt my chest collapse. I couldn't move. I didn't know what to say. I waited for him to laugh and say he was joking. He didn't. He put my passport back in the drawer and left the room. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed until the sun came up. My husband got into bed and fell asleep like nothing had happened. From that day on, they stopped pretending. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere alone. They kept my documents for safety. I wasn't on any bank account. I wasn't listed on anything official. They told me I was protected this way, that if immigration came knocking, no one would find me, that it was for my own good. But I wasn't being hidden to be protected. I was being buried. Whenever I asked to speak to someone, a lawyer, even just a family friend, they reminded me how easily they could report me. They said I was already illegal because I let my visa lapse. That even if I tried to leave, I'd be detained. That if I embarrassed the family, they'd handle it. I didn't know the laws. I didn't know my rights. They knew that. I cooked. I cleaned. I ironed their clothes. I wasn't allowed to make phone calls without someone around. They said it was so nothing gets miscommunicated. I wasn't allowed to speak in my language on the phone with my sister. They said it made them uncomfortable. They took my SIM card. Sometimes my husband would say, "I know it's hard, but this is temporary." Then he'd go play Xbox for 5 hours. He never fought for me. Not once. The worst day of my life wasn't when my passport was taken. It wasn't even the screaming or the gaslighting or being called ungrateful. It was when my mother died back home. She had a stroke. My sister sent a message through an old email. I cried for hours and asked to go back, just for a week, just to bury her. They said no, that it was too risky, that I should remember her how she was. My father-in-law told me, "You're part of this family now. That's done." I don't remember the week after that. I think something inside me shut off. But I'll tell you this, from that moment on, I stopped asking. I stopped crying. I stopped showing them anything. And I started paying attention. I noticed which drawer he kept my documents in. I noticed which day of the week they ran errands. I noticed how long it took for his phone to auto-lock. I noticed when the son left his laptop open and logged into Facebook. I started taking notes. Real notes. With dates. Times. Names. I couldn't write them down, so I memorized. Every insult. Every threat. Every time they mentioned my status. Every time they joked about how lucky I was. I didn't have a plan at first. Just survival. But eventually I met someone. A woman at the local church who offered ESL classes. She asked me one day, gently, if I needed help. She said she'd seen this before. She gave me her number on a paper, folded into a hymnal. It took me 4 months to call it. I only managed to say, "It's me. I need help." That was enough. She connected me to a legal clinic. They confirmed what I didn't know. What they were doing wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. Withholding documents, coercion, immigration fraud. It all counted. From there, things moved slowly. We had to be careful. They didn't know I was talking to anyone. They didn't know I had quietly filed paperwork, that I had a case number, that a lawyer was documenting everything, that a nonprofit had given me access to a safe phone, that I had printed photos of the drawer with my passport inside. They thought they had me under their thumb. Then one day, they went out longer than usual. I don't know what came over me. I packed a small bag and left. I didn't leave a note. I didn't tell anyone. My lawyer had already found me shelter. That night, I slept in a stranger's guest room. It was the first peaceful sleep I'd had in 6 years. I thought that would be the end of it. Just escape. But it turns out, I wasn't done. Getting out was just the first step. I thought once I left, they'd try to find me, call the police, report me missing, maybe even show up at shelters or churches. But they didn't. They didn't file a missing person report, didn't call my sister, didn't contact any of my old classmates. They just moved on like I'd never existed. 2 weeks after I left, my lawyer forwarded me an email from their family attorney. Short and cold. Said I had abandoned the marriage and they'd be seeking annulment. No mention of my passport. No mention of the years I'd lived under their control. They erased me like I was nothing. I guess they didn't want any attention. No one with that much control ever wants eyes on them. It was always about the image. A successful family. Church-going. Respectable. Couldn't have the neighbors wondering why their son's wife ran away. So I was gone, and they pretended I never happened. That hurt more than I thought it would. But it also told me something. They thought I'd stay quiet. For the next year, I stayed low. I worked odd jobs. I lived in shared housing. I went to therapy every Tuesday and cried almost every time. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. My therapist said it was like my brain had been rewired to survive, not to live. I started to build a life. Bit by bit. No one yelling. No doors locked. My own key, my own food in the fridge, my own phone. But even with everything better, I couldn't stop thinking about them. Not in a revenge fantasy way. More like an itch I couldn't scratch. They had taken everything, years, freedom, my mother's funeral, and walked away clean. That thought ate at me. I didn't want to get even. I wanted truth. I wanted them to be seen for what they did. So I asked my lawyer, "Can we do anything?" She hesitated. Said the hard part was proving intent. Abusers like them don't write things down. They don't leave a paper trail. But then I remembered something. When I lived there, my father-in-law used to write everything in a little black notebook. He was old school. Kept a log of household bills, repairs, even meals. He used to joke that if it's not written down, it didn't happen. It wasn't just a habit, it was pride. And one day, a few years ago, He had me sit at the kitchen table and help organize it. I remember flipping through pages. There, in the back, I saw a list. Took passport from, my name for safekeeping, advised her not to travel or apply for ID without family present. Reminder, talk to neighbor's son Ri. Ice questions, I had no idea what it meant at the time. I thought maybe it was just nonsense. But now it made sense. He was keeping proof of control. And if he hadn't thrown that notebook out, I called a friend I still had in town. One of the only people I still trusted. I didn't tell her everything, just said I needed help checking if something might still be in the house. She said she'd try. A few weeks later, she sent a photo. The notebook. Still on his shelf. Same handwriting. That's when everything changed. We sent the photo to my legal team. They got excited. They said if we could prove what was written inside, it could strengthen not just my case, but others. That kind of language, in his own words, tied directly to document withholding and immigration coercion. But we couldn't break into the house and take it. That would kill everything. So I waited. I knew they were planning a trip. I'd heard from someone's small-town gossip that they were going on a cruise to Europe. Something expensive. The kind of trip where customs is tight. That's when I had the idea. I won't say exactly how, but I found out their flight details. I knew what day they were flying. I knew which airline. I knew what bags they were bringing. And I knew that if certain documents, ones I'd printed with my lawyer's help, found their way into those bags, it would trigger extra screening. So we prepared a packet. Copy of my signed affidavit, printout of the case number, a letter from the nonprofit explaining what had been reported, a statement linking my ex-father-in-law to known patterns of coercive control. We printed it in triplicate. Slid it between some folded clothes. Not in the carry-on, in the checked luggage. Enough to make customs pull them aside overseas. Enough to start questions at re-entry. But that's not the twist. The twist is, I didn't put it in his bag. I put it in my ex-husband's. Because something had changed in the months since I left. He had remarried. To another foreign woman. From another vulnerable background. No family in the U.S. No legal support. And I found her Facebook. Nothing personal posted, just photos of food. Some comments in her native language. I translated a few. One of them. He says I don't need my passport anymore since we're married now. I trust him. That's when I knew. He was doing it again. I stared at that post for over an hour. I don't know what I felt. Rage. Grief. Guilt. I had escaped, but someone else had taken my place. And she had no idea what was coming. So no, I didn't slip the documents into the father-in-law's suitcase. I wanted my ex-husband to be the one stopped. I wanted his face to be the one customs officers looked at when they opened that folder and saw what he had done. That's where I'll leave this for now. They boarded the flight. The bags were scanned. They were pulled aside. And I have it on good authority. What they found ruined that trip before it ever began. After they were stopped at the airport, everything went quiet. Too quiet. For a while I thought maybe it hadn't worked. Maybe they'd just been questioned. Maybe nothing came of it. Or maybe they knew it came from me but couldn't prove it, so they stayed quiet. But then I got a message. Not from them. Not from anyone I expected. It was from my old landlord, the one from the first apartment I had right after I escaped. I hadn't lived there in over a year. He said 2 men had come by asking for me. They didn't give names. Just said they were old family friends and needed to find me for some urgent legal business. My stomach dropped. I asked him what they looked like. He said one was older, white hair, sharp eyes. The other was younger. Seemed polite, but something off about him, he said. He told them I'd moved. That he didn't have forwarding info. But he also said he didn't like the way they asked. Not worried like you'd expect, he said. It was like they were hunting. That same week, I noticed a car parked near my new place. Same car. Every night, same time. It never pulled up to the building, just sat across the street. Lights off. Engine running. I wasn't paranoid. I knew it was them. I reported it to the shelter network, and they put me on emergency transfer. New location. Different city. Different phone. Everything. The legal team tried to reassure me. Said the packet we slipped into the bag had been flagged by EU border officials. That customs had passed it along. that my ex and his father were now known entities, under investigation for immigration coercion and suspected trafficking behaviors. The lawyers were thrilled. But I wasn't safe yet, because this time they did fight back. They filed a lawsuit, not criminal, civil, for defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. They claimed I was spreading lies to ruin their reputations, that I was unstable, that I was obsessed with the family after being asked to leave due to erratic behavior. They used old messages I'd sent to my ex begging to go to my mother's funeral. They framed them as emotional manipulation. They even submitted photos of me cooking, smiling, as proof I had been happy during the time I claimed I was being abused. It hit hard, because in those pictures I do look happy. I'm smiling. I'm holding a tray of food. No bruises. No screaming. No proof of the panic I felt every single second. That's the thing about abuse that people don't get. Sometimes you look fine. Sometimes you laugh just to get through the day. Still, my lawyers weren't too worried. They called it a scare tactic, meant to shut me up, to intimidate me into withdrawing my claims. But it worked in a way.
I was scared again.
Really scared.
Not just for me.
For her. His new wife. I tried to find her. The girl from the Facebook posts. Her profile was gone. Deactivated. Or maybe blocked. I tried mutual friends, tagged posts. Nothing. I even contacted a domestic violence org in her home country, asking if there was any way to check if someone by that name had reached out. They couldn't tell me anything. Privacy laws. But then one night, I got an anonymous message. No name. No subject line. Just a single sentence. I found the notebook. I stared at it for hours. I didn't know who sent it. Could have been her. Could have been a setup. But the next day, another message came. This one with a photo. It was the black notebook. Opened. Handwritten notes. A list. Wife number 1 compliant but soft. Broke after mother died. Wife number 2 language barrier. Should take longer. Passport secured. Keep documents in shed safe, not in drawer anymore. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just abuse. It was systematic. A pattern. Like he was keeping track. Ranking people. Testing how long until they broke. This wasn't just a twisted father-in-law with control issues. This was planned. Organized. Like a method. I sent the messages straight to my lawyer. She called me 10 minutes later. We need to escalate, she said. This isn't just your case anymore. The next month was a blur of interviews, affidavits, subpoenas. Some agencies got involved. Real ones. Government. I found out later that mine wasn't the only complaint. 3 women. All immigrants. All under 30. 2 had married into the family. 1 had been a nanny for a relative. All of us had similar stories. Passports taken. Isolation. Threats about immigration status. We had never met, but we knew the same phrases. The same tricks. The same feeling of being watched, silenced, used. It wasn't just me anymore. But then, out of nowhere, everything stalled. One of the investigators went silent. A lawyer on the case left for personal reasons.
Calls started getting missed.
Emails took days to return. My lawyer looked nervous for the first time. I asked what was going on. She just said, they have more connections than we thought. Turns out my ex-father-in-law still had friends in law enforcement. Retired, yes, but not powerless. Old favors. Old boys' clubs. Doors that were once open suddenly closed. And just like that, everything froze. But I wasn't frozen. I was angry. And for the first time since the night they took my passport, I was ready to fight. Everything had gone quiet again. The case wasn't closed, but it felt like it had been buried. My lawyer kept saying to be patient, that these things take time, but I knew what was happening. I'd seen them do it before, not in courtrooms, but in kitchens and living rooms. When things got uncomfortable, they didn't fight. They smothered. They used silence like a weapon. I was angry. I was tired. But mostly, I was terrified this would become another secret that no one believed. And then another twist. Someone sent me an email through a secure form we'd set up with the shelter network. No name. Just this message. He did it to my aunt. 1999. She wasn't married. But she was never the same after she left. Attached was a photo. A woman, maybe in her 40s, smiling shyly. I didn't recognize her. Another message came a day later. He said if she told anyone, he'd send her back in a box. My hands shook reading it. The sender turned out to be the niece of a woman who had briefly worked for my ex-father-in-law when he was still active duty. She was undocumented, cleaning houses under the table. The woman, the aunt, had stayed in their basement for 6 months while doing housekeeping. There was no marriage, no paperwork. Just a verbal promise that if she behaved, he'd help her get legal. Then one day she disappeared. Her niece, who was just a child at the time, said her aunt never explained what happened. She reappeared months later, back in her home country, scared of everything.
Never talked about the U.S. again.
Never got married. Refused to have her photo taken. Died of a heart condition 2 years ago. The niece said she never thought to question the story until she saw something on a private Facebook group for immigrant women, a post that sounded a lot like mine. That's how she found me. That's when it hit me. He had been doing this for decades. We weren't the first. We wouldn't be the last. And some of the women never made it out. I brought this to my lawyer. She said it changed everything. That now we had something bigger, a pattern stretching back over 20 years. We filed a motion to reopen and escalate the case. Pushed it higher up. That's when the heat turned back on. Suddenly, there were new eyes on everything. Investigators I'd never heard of. Interviews. FOIA requests. My lawyer got a call from a federal agency, not local, not state. Bigger. Then we got another break. The woman who'd messaged me, the niece, said she'd gone through her aunt's old things. There wasn't much. Just a box. Inside, she found a folded piece of paper. It was a receipt for a money transfer. $800 wired to an account under my father-in-law's name, 2 months before her aunt left the U.S. On the note line, someone had written, "For legal services plus processing." But my father-in-law wasn't a lawyer. Never had been. He was selling immigration help to vulnerable women, then discarding them when they were no longer useful, or when they asked questions. We passed it to the investigators. They didn't say much, but I heard the tone in their voices change after that. But here's where things got complicated again. Because in the middle of all this, someone I never expected contacted me. My ex-husband's younger brother. He messaged me out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken in years. I barely knew him. He was away at college during most of my marriage, and when he came home, he kept to himself. Quiet. Awkward. The kind of person who never met your eye. But his message was short. I know what they did. I'm ready to talk. I didn't answer at first. I was suspicious. My lawyer was cautious. But then he followed up with a photo. It was a picture of the shed safe. Open. Inside were passports, IDs, old documents, all in plastic folders. Some had my name. Others I didn't recognize. And taped to the inside of the door a list.
Dates. Names.
Initials. And next to each, compliant, uncooperative, removed, deported. I had to sit down. He told me he'd known something was wrong for a long time. That when he was a teen, he saw his father yelling at one of the women. Saw him grab her arm. That the whole family pretended nothing happened. It was just Dad being intense, they said. But now, after seeing me come forward and hearing what his brother had started doing, he said he couldn't stay quiet. He wanted out of the family for years. Now he had a reason. He agreed to testify, to hand over the safe, to give names,
Dates.
whatever he could. He said, "I should have said something when you were still there.
I'm sorry.
I just didn't know how bad it really was." I told him, "You did know. You just didn't want to see it."
He didn't argue.
He just said, "Let me help now." And I said yes. Because I didn't care about him being sorry. I cared about stopping them. The younger brother turned everything. His testimony was the key. He gave the investigators full access to the shed safe, handed over passwords, emails, old hard drives. He even found an old flip phone that still had texts from my father-in-law to one of the women. One message read, "No ID equals no freedom. You want out, you do what we say." The documents inside the shed were worse than I imagined. 7 passports. All women. Some expired. Some never returned. IDs. Visa documents. Signed agreements that were clearly faked. One folder had a photo of me, paper-clipped to a checklist titled Obedience. Under it, boxes checked off. Quiet, no family nearby, a scared, obedient, breakable next to that last one. Someone had written in pen. Yes. I sat in the lawyer's office shaking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to burn it all. Instead, I took a breath and said, "We're not done." The evidence was sent to federal investigators. They opened a multi-agency case. Suddenly, this wasn't about my ex or his father anymore. It was bigger. A trafficking investigation. But I wasn't out of the fire either, because I had made my own mistakes. When I'd planted that evidence in their luggage, I'd broken the law, even if for good reason. Tampering with property. International interference. I knew it could come back on me. And it did. I got a letter. Formal warning. Technically, I could have been charged. But the investigator wrote in the final note, "Due to the broader nature of the case and the extensive abuse involved, we are declining to pursue charges at this time." I wasn't off the hook, not really. I had crossed a line. I had to live with that. I don't regret it, but I won't lie and say it didn't leave a mark. The case moved fast after that. They arrested my ex-father-in-law first. Picked him up from his house one morning. No warning. The news made the local paper. Retired officer arrested in human trafficking investigation. My ex-husband was arrested 2 weeks later. Charged with aiding and abetting, document fraud, and coercion. His second wife disappeared before they could question her. I don't know where she is. I hope she's safe. In the end, they charged them both with multiple counts, some federal. During the trial, the courtroom was cold. I testified. So did the niece. So did 2 other women who came forward late, one from 2006, one from 2011. My ex sat there with that same blank face he always had. Like none of this mattered. Like it was just noise. When I described the night they took my passport, how I sat on the edge of the bed while they laughed in the kitchen, I finally said out loud the thing I never said before. I thought about ending my life that night. And none of them noticed. His face changed then. For just a second. His jaw clenched. His hands shook. Good. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. On all major counts. My ex got 12 years. No parole for at least 10. His father? 25. He'll likely die in prison. But that wasn't the real ending. The real ending came 2 months later. I was sitting at home, my own home, with my name on the lease, when I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a photocopy of something I never thought I'd see again, my original passport. And written across the back, in shaky handwriting, "I should have never touched this. I see that now." No signature. Nothing else. But I recognized the handwriting. The younger brother. He was clearing out the house. Found it buried in a locked box. Said in a later email that his father had kept souvenirs from each woman. That mine had been labeled Control Number 4. I stared at the passport for a long time. Not because I needed it, I had a new one now. A new name. A new life. But because this one reminded me of what they'd taken. What they'd tried to erase. And how I came back. I was never supposed to leave that house. But I did. And now they'll never leave the prison they built for themselves. That's the ending. That's the justice.